We're going to talk now with Jaime Moore. We have him for a short time. Jaime Moore is the new LA Fire Chief. Welcome, Chief Moore. Thank you for coming on.
You got it, John. It's been a while. Last time I spoke to you, you were still hanging out with Ken.
Yes, I know. Well, Ken has moved on. He enjoys being home now. Let me ask you this. Why doesn't everyone in government and everyone in the fire department just come clean and tell us the whole story? Why doesn't everybody do that for us?
I think I can only speak for myself, and I think I did that just last Tuesday at our fire commission meeting when I came clean and I talked about the Lockman fire and how we could have done better.
No, but the whole story, it's coming out in little drips and drabs. You know, text messages are leaked. The whole story is like starting with meetings, let's say, the week before the fire. There was no deployments. The whole situation with the state parks reps, there was no hydrants, the reservoir being empty. I want to hear the story of everybody's role, day by day, hour by hour, how this developed and what happened. That's what everybody wants to know.
Okay, well, let me tell you, I can tell you how it works. Whenever we have inclement weather like we had back in January of 2025, we as a fire department, I can only speak about the fire department, get together and we have a meeting. And it's the deputy duty commander with emergency operations and those decision makers that are going to staff the resources. They're going to handle the Metro Fire Communications. They're going to handle the dispatching of apparatus. They get together and they look at a deployment model matrix. Back in about 3 years ago, we made a change in that deployment model matrix, which changed from given certain conditions, you shall provide this many resources to a should. And we did that because of fiscal responsibility, trying to reduce the budget, trying to manage the amount of resources we were deploying. So when we did that, we put a human factor into it. And that's where I think we went wrong, is that human decision-making allowed us to be able to say from shall do this to should do this. And back in January, if you look back on January 6th, the decision was made to pre-deploy resources, but not the amount of resources that we significantly needed for the January 7th fire. So we did deploy resources. We didn't deploy nearly as many resources as we should. We never recalled. We never held anybody over. And we're paying the price for it. And that's unfortunate because we didn't anticipate what happened with the Lockman fire because we honestly thought that fire was out. So on January 1st, when that fire broke out, firefighters went out there. They were there all day the first. They were all day the second into that evening, and then they picked up the hose.
All right, I've got to interrupt you here because you've seen the stories. Apparently, the firefighters on duty did not believe it was put out, and they told their battalion chief that it's not put out. It was still smoldering. The rocks were hot. The tree stumps were hot. There's video of actual smoke coming out of the area after the fire was mopped up. So why did the battalion chief roll up the hoses? What's the role of the state park reps trying to chase these guys off? There's a big story there, and nobody's coming clean.
And John, I hear what you're saying, and I have heard about these text messages. They've never been brought to my attention, but I'm treating them as if they're real. I've spoken to the battalion chief that was on scene that day, and the one that was there previously. That fire was out. They truly believe that fire was out. Nobody came up to them and told them that the fire wasn't out. Nobody sent them a text message according to them, and I've asked everybody, even the media, to please turn over these text messages. I have yet to see a single text message.
If you see them, though, let's assume they're true. Someday we're going to see them.
I have assumed they're true.
Right. Okay.
That's the thing, John.
So if you see them, it's not going to make a difference in how you're thinking right now. Let's assume they're true. Someday we'll all get to see them. It's inexplicable.
So, John, I have to assume they're true, and that's the way I've been dealing with this thing. All the changes that are have been made with our policy in regards to the use of drones, thermal imaging, the pre-deployment, those are all assuming that those were true. Our mop-up procedures have changed completely, all based on what I'm assuming are true in those text messages.
But I think people want to know how many bad decisions could be made in such a short period of time. It seems like every decision ended up being the wrong decision. How could that be with all the experience and the training that your department has?
Well, you're absolutely right. It does seem like there were a lot of bad decisions that were made. We didn't anticipate this magnitude of a storm. It was in perfect alignment. We had anywhere from 40 to 90 mile an hour winds. There were hurricane force winds with occasional gusts up to 100 miles an hour.
But there wasn't continuous 90 mile an hour winds. Most of the time it was closer to 40, all right? Maybe high up on a mountain there was a gust at 90. So when it was blazing through the town itself, those weren't 90 mile an hour winds. They were 40 mile an hour winds. And the thing is, we work here. We were broadcasting mornings for a week about what was going to happen. We collected all the Twitter messages online, all the apocalyptic language from the National Weather Service. Like, it's impossible for people in charge not to know that this had a very good chance of being this disastrous.
John, you're absolutely right. But let me tell you this: with 460 square miles of the city of Los Angeles and the amount of wildland-urban interface, we can't put the number of resources we have all over the place.
But the Palisades had the hot spot. The Palisades had the Lockman Fire hotspot.
In hindsight, you're absolutely right, but we did not know that at the time. And if we had the ability to look back and in hindsight, we would have had a resource sitting right on top of it. And I wasn't the fire chief at the time. I didn't deploy the resources at the time, but I can tell you this: moving forward, we're going to have a better deployment model. We have a better decision-making matrix. We have a larger number of resources that will be deployed, and we have newer resources. We have Type 6 resources, which are wildland-urban interface specialized resources to be able to handle those roads that are up in the mountains like that. And then we also have hand crews. We didn't have hand crews at the time that were dedicated to the city of Los Angeles. In my budget moving forward, I got another hand crew that's on and request. So I've got funding coming for an additional helicopter. I've got requests for funding for more personnel. Those are the things that are going to help us in the future. But it's also the decision making. So we put policies and procedures in place so we don't make those same mistakes that we've made in the past.
The reservoir being empty, the hydrant's not working. Does anybody at the fire department talk with people from the Department of Water and Power?
Yes, we do.
And talk with
in the process right.
But I mean, in the past year or two, that reservoir, it was empty for a year. And it seems the firefighters showed up and they didn't realize there wasn't going to be much water to work with.
Well, the water problem was a problem with the amount of water we were flowing from the hydrants. It was also a matter of all the open butts that were happening because of the number of homes that were being burnt down. So you had all these open orifices. I mean, there's stories, if you talk to these firefighters, where they were going and shutting off water valves to the house so they could shut off the domestic, which did nothing. It did absolutely nothing to help in the situation. Wow. But it was everything they were doing to try to combat this conflagration.
Right. But it's hard to believe 117 million gallons wouldn't help. I talked to a guy who defended his house and two of his neighbors. He saved all three homes and all he had was a 2-inch hose that he had kept from the last fire. I mean, if he
had water.
Yeah, he had water, but it was a 2-inch hose, and he saved 3 homes. That's why it's hard to believe that 117 million gallons in the Sentinez Reservoir wouldn't have had an effect.
But, John, what you're saying is he had water. It wasn't a matter – we didn't have enough firefighting resources all over. And when you look at the number of resources we had till the end, it didn't stop until the wind stopped blowing. We had aircraft the next day when we could finally get clearance for our aircraft to fly. We had aircraft up, and that was one of our number one things. And our aircraft even had a jump on this fire because they were on their way to Hollywood when they were fighting a fire in Hollywood that broke out just before the Palisades Fire. So that gave us a leg up, and they diverted some aircraft over to the Palisades. It still didn't do us any good.
I have had many friends who lost their homes. I've since spoken to many people in the Palisades because my wife and I hike there a lot, and we run into them all the time. And they told us the stories, and they all say the same thing. Nobody ever came to our neighborhood. There were no firefighters. We just eventually had to evacuate and watch our home burn on our Ring cameras. I can't tell you how many times that story was told to me. So where was everybody?
John, our firefighters responded to where that fire started, and they got locked into fighting fires right around there, putting out fires. And if you look at the footprint of the Palisades Fire, the majority of the homes were lost or at the tail end of it, where the fire just became such a large volume of flames with the ember casts that were burning home after home after home. Our firefighters were tied up trying to take care of those initial ones. And then when we called in more resources, they were trying to do what they could. We just didn't have enough resources. And if you look at the Eaton, they battled the same issues. This was an anomaly of a fire.
Yeah, except if there was a crew at the Lockman fire at the flare up, then maybe none of this happens.
And John, if we had that ability to know that was going to happen, we honestly thought that fire was out.
Yeah.
It had been wind tested for 5 days.
But common sense, just in case mentality, if there's one place it was going to kick up, number one place, if you had put together a matrix, top 10 places that I worry about, if you were in charge then, wouldn't you have said, okay, we just had a fire there 6 days ago, and we know winds can whip that up, and we know they burn underground.
And John, the reason we're having this conversation is because last Tuesday I said we own that.
I still would like to get the details from everybody involved in that week leading up to the fire and the day it happened. I would just love to have everybody show up at a press conference and just take as much time as you want and explain it. And I think you'd end up with a lot of goodwill from the public, because I think you know this, you've alluded to this. Why should anybody believe anything you say or anybody in government in Los Angeles after this?
Because I come out and I can only speak on my behalf and what I'm responsible for, and that's the Los Angeles Fire Department.
Why is it so badly funded? What is the bias that the city council and the mayors over the years have had against the fire department?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that I think we struggle with as firefighters is we always make things work. When they cut our resources several years ago and shut down our fire engines and some of our fire trucks, and some of them have yet to be replaced, we continue to run those calls. When 911 calls are made, we respond, and we do our best to provide the level of service that the people of Los Angeles expect. And it's running our people into the ground. I mean, it really is. The call volume's insane. The amount of miles we're putting on our resources, we're putting 40,000 miles a year on our fire engines. That's unheard of. Our replacement cycle is every 15 years, and we've got them going way beyond the 15-year mark. And
you're responding to thousands and thousands of homeless fires every year. That seems insane, especially when there wasn't enough available for the only fire really this year that mattered. I mean, do you find the policy of allowing all the homeless in the streets to start fires by the thousands? What do you think of that policy?
So John, we obviously have a problem with the homeless starting fires, and some of those are behavioral health and mental health crises, and so we're working with those service providers to assist them. But what we're doing on the flip side is we're bringing in innovative resources like our fast response vehicles, which only have 2 individuals on them instead of an entire fire engine, so it's not tying up the fire engine. It's got a tank of water on it, and it's got an ability to put those fires out. We're using those fast response vehicles to combat those type of fires, to help with the call volume, to free up the call volume and the demand on our resources. We're trying to be innovative with what we can.
Right, but what I was asking you, what do you think the bias is from the various mayors and the city council members that you've never come close to the proper funding? I've read that you should have double the fire engines, double the firefighters available, double the budget, therefore. Why is it we're so just tragically short? What is it about the politicians that vote on this stuff? What do you think it is?
I wish I could answer that question.
Because now look at the tremendous price we paid, and I believe you that you don't have the funding, and that's what Kristen Crowley said too. And Crowley got fired in part because she said that out loud. Do you feel free to speak on these matters?
Well, I'm speaking to you right now.
Right. But do you have to hold back and not tell everything because you might get the call that she got saying you're out of here?
Well, I always run that risk, and that's something that the city charter set forth, is that we work, we work for the mayor's office, and there's always that risk. And so is there a balance? Yeah, you have to have a balance. But I like to think that I'm doing what's best for the people of Los Angeles, no matter what it is.
So it's a year. It's a year later now.
And
Go ahead.
I've got another meeting that I got to run to.
Okay.
We were supposed to be about 10 minutes. I think we went quite a bit over that.
Well, I appreciate the extra time, and I think everyone listening really appreciates you coming on and talking.
Well, I appreciate your interest, and I understand your frustration. And one of the things that I encourage your listeners to understand is that they do have an incredible fire department, and we recognize some of the challenges we've had in the past. We're making those changes, and we're going to be better for them. And my sympathies go out to the families that lost loved ones at the Palisades Fire, and anybody and everybody who was affected with either the loss of their home or the loss of their business.
All right. Well, I hope you can come back on and we can talk even longer.
Anytime, Jim.
All right. Jaime Moore. He's the LA Fire Chief. Thanks for the extra time. If you're just tuning in, we had an interview in the first segment with the Fire Chief for Los Angeles, Jaime Moore. And I do appreciate him coming on. And we did manage to get him a bit longer than it was allocated. And I do want him to come back and talk more. And he seems to be sincere about wanting to change things, but he can't change things alone. I will say what I really want, and I am sure most people want this, you probably want this, is I want the complete tick by tick story, minute to minute of that entire week. And I want to know who had meetings and who didn't have meetings. And I want to know why they didn't have meetings. I want to know, and he doesn't have all this information necessarily, but collectively they all know. Karen Bass knows if she had a preparation meeting with Kristen Crowley and anybody else. Janice Quinones knows if the information about the empty reservoir was transmitted to the right people at the fire department. And Bass and Quinones should have to explain how they let the reservoir stay empty for a year. How come the fire hydrants are all broken? How come money wasn't spent on a study and then changes implemented? So if you had a big wildfire, how do you get the system to work better? Not everything was done to track that Lockman fire after it was allegedly put out. You know, they didn't do things like thermal imaging and whatnot. There were locals who saw the smoke and the smoldering. There was something wacky happened when the state park reps came and chased out the LAPD, the LA Fire Department, rather, over the milk veg plant. I mean, the thing is, this scandal, the incompetence of this is so big, so massive, involving so many different departments and so many different people over a long period of time. You know, what can we do in a 15-minute interview? With one guy, and let's be honest, he can't say everything that's on his mind. He can't say everything he knows. Again, you go back to Kristen Crowley. But we pay for this. And everybody forgets that. We pay for this. You know, people all day long worry about how much money they're paying for gasoline, right? They'll drive an extra block or an extra mile, get cheaper gas. You're always going to a cheaper grocery store to get cheaper fruits and vegetables, cheaper meat, right? Look how people are going crazy during the inflation coming out of the pandemic. People scrambling to find less expensive everything. That's why people order online through Amazon, because it's less expensive than going to the store. So why not apply that same mentality to all the tax money we're spending and get nothing back for it? Why not? And why, at the very least right now, Isn't Bass and Quinones, LA City Council members, the fire chief at the time, Kristen Crowley, the second fire chief, Ronnie Villanueva, why aren't they all required to sit at a public hearing? This is what ought to be investigated by the legislature, by the assembly, by the Senate, by the attorney general. They should be televised hearings for weeks, and everybody under oath should come clean and explain it all. That's what ought to happen. We pay for all this. Everybody should demand that. Absolutely demand it. There's a story there, and they know the story.